Well, more on the topic of being understood or misunderstood as an NI dominant, as an INTJ, as an INFJ. Um, One of the reasons why NI dominants are prone to feel like they are misunderstood, in addition to everything that I've covered before, and particularly this ambiguous and ambivalent relationship between the experience of being INFJ and the experience of being misunderstood. There is an extent to which a lot of INFJs would feel threatened by the very fact of being suddenly understood by everyone. Because if they were to be suddenly understood by everyone, it would mean, in a sense, that the narrative they tell themselves about their singular nature has to be redefined. It cannot be about the complexity of their mind because it can be understood by everyone. Anyway, that's stuff that I've covered before and I will not return to it, although what I'm going to discuss today is linked to it. You see, I do, in fact, happen to believe that the internal world of INFJs is fairly layered and complex and nuanced, and that it's not the case of everybody. There are people whose internal world is less layered, less complex, and less nuanced. Okay? It doesn't mean that it doesn't have any complexity, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have any nuance or anything like that, but it's a bit less. And even a bit less goes a long way towards the fact of this internal world not being too obvious or present to mind in the case of these other people, non-NI dominants. I won't necessarily ascribe a type to them, but very unlikely to be NI dominants, because NI is really arguably the function that, when it is in a position of dominance, puts you in touch with not necessarily the unconscious, but at least the influence of the unconscious over conscious life, greater than any other function. It seems to be my observation. This is not based on a particular series of theoretical postulates. So if we agree to this, if we agree with this, then we INFJs and INTJs have to imagine that there are a lot of people in the world who are not particularly preoccupied with the question of being understood. It's not as if there's two categories of people in the world, NI dominants and other people, who lament the fact that they're very frequently misunderstood, not understood. And then the happy ones that are like, oh, I'm so glad I'm understood, or who take for granted that they're understood. It's more precisely, quite often the case, that a lot of people don't really ask themselves the question of whether they're understood or not. I mean, you could say, I suppose, that these people take for granted that they are understood. But what they take for granted is not the fact that the people that interact with them have taken stock of their complex internal world, thought about it, and done justice to it, as much justice to it as they could, right? Because they don't take for granted that they have a complex internal world to begin with. Because that internal world, while it has a degree of complexity, is not something that is present to their minds at all times. So in a sense, the reason why NI dominance and, both INTJ and INFJ, even though INFJs will be the ones that will tend to be more vocal about the experience of being misunderstood and its negative implications. In a sense, the main reason why they feel misunderstood is because they place great value in the fact of understanding other people's internal worlds. That is not the case of everyone. neither for their own internal worlds, and then by extension, by extrapolation, the internal worlds of other people. So if you could imagine a somewhat strange being, an INFJ who has somehow managed to not think too often about the complexity of their internal world, this INFJ would not experience being misunderstood that much, right? Not because they are in fact less misunderstood or more understood, but because this is not something that they value that much compared to other things. This INFJ is unlikely to exist. Number one, because of what I described about the NI function's closeness to the unconscious. And second of all, because it is part of the INFJ self-image, both for people who are aware that they are INFJ and people who are not aware that they are INFJ. It is part of the self-image of most people who identify as NI dominant to have a complex internal world that they can return to, that they can articulate, that they can find retreat in, refuge in, that they can slowly build away from the stares of other people. So it's almost part of the sense of identity of an NI dominant to have, among other things, a complex internal world, not part of the self-image or nearly as much part of the self-identity of many, many other people. And for this reason alone, they'd be much less likely to experience feeling misunderstood. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video, guys. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Don't forget, I've written 2 books on the INFJ, the Ecstatic Soul, which is my first book on the INFJ, still the deepest investigation of the INFJ mind. So get it today if you haven't yet. You should also get the sequel, the Infinite Soul, which is all about INFJs in the external world. First the INFJ mind, and then INFJs in the world. The 2 books are available below, and don't forget that I cannot do this without you guys. I need your support more than ever. For a small amount every month or once a year, you get access on Patreon, on my Patreon. The link to my Patreon is below, to really cool perks like access to our Discord server, growing every day. Join me there, you can talk to me, as well as bonus videos, deep dives into a topic of your choosing every 2-3 weeks. I thank you so much for considering it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.